Learning to trust. In a classroom with native speakers and different levels of proficiency, producing the language can be a challenge. Novice learners feel embarrassed and without enough trust to speak and share ideas. In my classroom, students developed different emotions in regards to language that affected their performance. They felt insecure due to other students' level of proficiency and their own lack of ability to produce the language. These emotions guided me to ask myself, how could I adapt my own teaching to help and build confidence for the various learners in my classes so that they could develop both their cultural and language proficiency? My Fulbright Spanish teaching assistant placement was at Austin College. I was in charge of 3 Spanish classes per semester: advanced conversation, discussions on health professions, and the Jordan Spanish House. I was also in charge of the Spanish table at the Jordan House. I had 9 students in the advanced conversation class, 2 students in the discussions on health professions, and 13 students in the Jordan House. I had 8 Spanish heritage students and the rest were native English speakers. The classes were focused on developing proficiency through cultural tasks. At the beginning of my classes, I noticed the insecurity and lack of motivation to speak due to the mistakes they were making while producing the language. So I decided to allow my students to focus on their production without interfering with it. This strategy reinforced their trust and motivation to produce the language. Positive behaviors were taking place and manifesting with effort and understanding. Moreover, I also provided a scaffolding for those students in a lower proficiency level so they could advance in their language acquisition process. I provided students with support strategies like vocabulary before class, supporting sentences to speak, and readings before class or before the introduction of a new topic. One of the most successful strategies I used in the classroom was my approach to error correction and feedback. As teachers, we need to be aware of strategies to overcome students' errors without affecting their attitudes. This is why approximation and circumlocution can provide learners with strategies that they will later introduce to their own repertoire. Moreover, I found out that one of the most impactful findings of the various research mentioned in the test is how corrective feedback can be saved or reserved for a later time. And this is a strategy I used in the classroom along with undirected feedback through parsing or rephrasing. Another strategy is my emphasis on culture. I created scenarios to understand culture such as music, dance, photography, testimonies, readings, videos, interviews, Day of the Dead altar, and exhibitions, more known as realia. I aim to show my culture so that they can broaden their understanding of life and language. I did not know how important it was to connect the material from class to different aspects like connections, comparisons, culture, communities, and communication. By doing this, lessons will be more effective and significant for these students. To do so, reading and realia play an important role as they can help the reader to think, look, learn, and integrate as suggested by Galloway, which will lead to cross-cultural understanding. Thinking, looking, learning, and integrating. Furthermore, language should be taught using examples and materials of the place where it is spoken. This way, students can understand how meaning can change depending on pragmatics and sociolinguistic components. As addressed by Steiner in 1971, when place lacks, when the eyes drop, when the heat comes, the smart teacher will have the cultural unit. As a teacher, I guided myself to focus on acquiring multicultural awareness strategies to address cultural in my classroom setting to improve my students' learning goals and level of achievement when learning a second language. Being able to create a sense of multiculturality, diversity, and global understanding was for me the way to motivate, let down their affective filter, and engage students in critical discussions that form meaningful and transformative learning. My last strategy was enough input. Another big learning is the way in which I created my lessons. Now I can focus on providing input and scaffolding because I know the importance is also in the process of learning, and I know that if I want my students to produce the language, they need exposure to meaningful input and activities that can build their proficiency. Research will always inform practice, and both of these will inform my own teaching.